Article 3. Shall the town raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by the vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $7,464,993. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $7,227,983, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40, 13, 10, and 16, I think that's right, to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Do I have a motion?
This was recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Oh, I moved the question.
No, you have to. I need a first and a second.
Yeah, moved.
Seconded? So Vice Chair Meany moves it. Chair Hippler seconds it.
There we go.
And who's speaking to it?
I'll be speaking to it. In 2021, the voters approved an operating budget of $7,136,435. They also approved 3 warrant articles that had recurring costs. The warrant article for non-union raises, the warrant article for full-time firefighter EMS, and the warrant article for Parks and Rec wage increases. Combined, these 3 warrant articles increased our future budget by $93,191 to a total of $7,209,626. In 2022, we continue to see state-mandated New Hampshire retirement system contribution increase, as well as voter-approved police collective bargaining agreement pay increases. These 2 items would have increased our default budget by $122,460. However, we are fortunate to see that our debt service interest decreased, as well as decrease in our health insurance premiums. We also acquired other decreases in wages and salaries due to retirees, rehiring, and restructuring. Overall, are only increasing by $18,357 to $7,227,983, which is the 2022 default budget. The Board of Selectmen are proposing a $237,010 increase. That's a 3.28% increase over the voter-approved operating budget. Police Department has a $59,762,000 increase, and many programs of the department were underfunded in 2020. The $78,000 contract for the prosecutor ended, and because we received a full default budget in 2021, the monies were not transferred into the new budget. The Weare Police Department now fulfills the responsibilities of the prosecutor within their operating budget. Other programs such as tasers, body-worn cameras, and ballistic equipment are all underfunded with no maintenance or replacement plan accountability. The Highway Department has a $132,339 increase. That's due to rising fuel and salt costs, the largest increase to the budget. The Highway Department is proposing an added account line for guardrails. There was a previous account for signs, posts, and rails. However, it was never funded properly to replace broken guardrails. The increase in gravel road maintenance account is to allow the purchase of calcium chloride for the gravel roads during the dry months. The transfer station, $50,358 increase. The largest increase is to the Deliberative and the hauling of municipal trash account lines. In the past 2 years, the municipal trash hauling has increased from 2 trips a week to 3. There is also an increase in the account for Household Hazardous Waste Day. There is an overwhelming amount of hazardous waste material that arrives during the hosted HHW Day event that needs to be there needs to be an increase to the account to cover the cost of disposing of these materials. We have a surplus expenditure discussion. The board heard concerns regarding the year and expenditures and how it relates to the proposed budget. Due to staff shortages for multiple months in the majority of the departments, police, fire, highway, transfer, and town office, the town's expenditures were under budget. Many positions have been filled, but there are still vacancies. At year end, there was a surplus in the payroll-related accounts of $444,247. In August, the federal government awarded the town with ARPA funds totaling $950,000, and that's split over 2 years. The Board of Selectmen generated a list of projects that fall under the strict requirement for the use of these funds. In the fall, the Board of Selectmen started conversations with Motorola to upgrade the public safety radio system, and we received a projected cost of $1,500,000. As the end of the year came near, the Board of Selectmen reviewed surplus from the operating budget, mostly due to payroll vacancies, and the Board of Selectmen decided that the entire ARPA funding would be best used to complete the offset the radio project. As part of that decision, it was opted to purchase those projects slated for ARPA from the year-end funds, as well as other one-time expenses requested by department heads. This still leaves a balance of approximately $324,748 going into the unreserved fund balance at the end of the year.
Okay, I recognize the Chair of the Finance Committee, Tom Downing.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Can everybody hear me? Great. The people next to me can hear me. How about that?
Yeah, much better.
All right. You might want to turn that up a little. The Weare Finance Committee recommends this article. The committee supports the proposed budget, which is a 4.6% increase over the current year. The default is a 1.3% increase. The $237,000 difference between the proposed and the default budget results in about a $45 tax increase on a $350,000 property. The majority of the $237,000 difference of $182,000 is in the highway and transfer station budgets. With high inflation, the committee wanted to ensure these critical services to the town have sufficient funds for repairs, parts, trash removal, fuel, salt, sand, and salt. Approving the proposed budget will also more accurately align budget line items with expenditures. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, seeing, there he is. Hi, Mr. Campana.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Frank Campana, Quaker Street. And I will try to be brief and not confusing, hopefully. If you look at the handout, the dollar amounts on the last page, page 3, top of page 3, the tax impact for both the default and the proposed, and please, somebody from the table, if I misspeak, please correct me if I'm wrong. You have to add an extra 18 cents to both of those dollars, the $3.19 and the $3. And that comes from not necessarily a line item in the budget that you see, but when the selectmen set the tax rate at the end of the year, there's an expense of overlay called overlay, money used to abate taxes, and the war service credit to someone like me, but still it cost me. So the veterans credit is 16 cents, the overlay is 2 cents, so that's where the 18 cents comes in. I don't know how you would explain that to the people, but and I'm not accusing the board by any means, but it is a hidden cost. Okay.
Does somebody want to speak to that?
Okay, so I presume I did not misspeak. The other thing, and I think Mr. Meany, Selectman Meany, did broach the subject. one of his rationale for the proposed budget, he mentioned trash hauling is gone up. Well, I looked that line up quickly here. I wasn't prepared, but that's a contract. And I believe that with a contract, the obligation of a contract, you can make that adjustment in the default budget. So, no? Okay?
It depends.
Oh, it depends.
Contracts.
It depends if it's from my side or your side.
It does not. It depends on whether town meeting has approved the contract or not. If town meeting has approved the contract, it can go in the default budget. If it's a contract the selectmen have entered into and town meeting has not approved, it cannot go in the default budget.
Okay, I can understand that, and I would agree. Well, it's in parentheses here, and it says it ends in 22. I don't know when it, what part of the year before or after, or at the end of the year. So I guess I'm not sure. Are we still in that contract, or is it?
Yes, it's still in the contract.
Okay, so I
But
will
it
ask.
it has fuel surcharges and so forth added into that.
Right. So I will ask again. That can, in your estimation, to the town's attorney, that can be included in the default budget. Because it shows here it's a lesser amount.
If the contract was not approved by town meeting, those increases cannot go in the default budget.
Well, it's already been approved because it extends into this year. So it,
But it wasn't approved by this body. It was approved by the selectmen.
okay. And I'll move on. At the end of the year, make sure I have the right page that I can refer to, if need be. At the end of the year, last year, the selectmen, we all were living under a default budget. And quite honestly, I think the town did pretty well. But can someone on the board answer, through the moderator, answer my question? What did not get done or accomplished with the default budget last year? And I might add, if it'll help with an answer, the town, the selectmen, I didn't, but the selectmen did, they ended the year with a over a $468,000 budget surplus.
Who would like to take that?
That was in that, what I read, Frank, and it was the, due to salaries, that we had people that left, that we didn't fill positions, and that's where some of that money came from.
Okay, well, I find it, well,
So
let
Frank,
me state another number,
Frank, can I speak?
please.
So, like you said, yes, what got compromised last year? Probably not much in a default budget, other than with the short staffing and the restructuring. What they did was they made ends meet and strain the employees, is what they did. But again, because of our employee base that we have, which is great, they made it work. Now, with those vacancies filled, restructured, et cetera, we're not going to have another 400,000 as surplus this year. That's the plan.
Okay, and I agree with that. I'm not banking on that amount of money, but there, you folks, at the end of the year, a portion of that money, almost $280,000, shy about $3,000, you pre-bought things. You made year-end purchases. Many of them, I didn't bring the list with me, but I know specifically the police department, the police chief at one of the meetings, one of the last meetings, he said that he returned $190,000. And if you look at the year-end purchases from that department specifically, which I think he had about $50,000 of that couple of $100,000. If you look at his year-end purchases, that they are line item budgets, line items in his budget. So I have to question, why did he return $190,000 and now he's looking for $50,000 in year-end purchases because he didn't have the money? It's ridiculous. I mean, I'm very simple-minded, and I don't understand that. And I'll make this the last part of the comment, just for consideration of time. I think the town can do very well with a default budget. Okay. Again, I'm not counting on $400,000 surplus again. I don't know that, but I think they can do very well. And why pay more than we need to pay, especially with the surpluses that the town has realized at the end of the year. And the last thing is in the default budget, because the selectmen do not reduce any lines, they don't have to, they can, to me, irrespective of what the definition is. Okay. Well, there's a line item in the default budget, insurances. It's a $63,000 decrease. Now, that decrease is not reflected in the default budget. That decrease is included in the default budget. And it's kind of counterintuitive to me to say, there's no good reason to vote for the proposed budget because the default budget already has $63,000 to its good. And I believe within the highway department, and I'm only going to give the two examples, well, I'll give three. The highway department, there's a line for roadside mowing at $13,000. We own our own machine to his credit to buy that. It was rental fee. All right. That is still in the default budget. It's inflated in the default budget because the selectmen don't reduce it. And there's the police department, there's $8,500 for accreditation that's inflated in the default budget. So there's those three things are $84,000 in the default budget to the selectmen's good. They have that money to play with. I'm telling you, folks, that, you're only told by the Board of Selectmen what they want you to hear. And they don't do any more than that. Thank you.
One correction, Frank.
Okay.
And you're talking, and specifically the roadside mowing. We do have our own mowing machine, but if you look at the proposed budget, it's reduced by $11,000. There's $1,000 left in there to hold that item, and it's basically used if we need some type of repair for that machine.
Right.
So, I mean, that was kind of a misleading statement. You said that we're holding that money and going to do that. It's down to $1,000.
Vice Chair Meany, if you could direct comments to the moderator, and I will direct them to the legislative body.
I
Thank you, sir.
beg your pardon.
So if I may, through you,
Go ahead.
question that. I don't think I misspoke. I may have. I said you have that line in front of you, so I won't have to look it up. But I think that line is $13,000 for roadside mowing. Now, you're looking at the proposed budget. What is it?
I'm looking at both. It was $12,000 was the last one that was approved when we bought that machine. And that's, we
Right.
no longer use that, and it was used, and it was now reduced to $1,000 in the proposed budget.
In the proposed budget, correct.
That's right.
I said, but that $13,000 is in the default budget.
It's
Because the default budget,
it's
you
not
don't
13,
adjust
it's 12.
it. Okay.
So
Pardon me, Mr. Meany.
we've taken 11,000 out,
Right.
and we did that
You
before.
kept
with
that
not using that
$1,000.
for repairs for that machine.
I get that.
So point of clarification? Is that clear? Okay,
Okay, thank you, Madam Moderator.
thank you.
Good morning. My name is Richard Butt, Old Town Road. I have a question. Surplus has been discussed a lot, and I have a question regarding surplus. If there is a surplus at the end of the year, are there any, Madam Moderator, are there any restrictions on how that money can be used? I was under the understanding that that money could only be used for those items that are listed in the operating budget, because it is an operating budget surplus. So could I get clarification as to?
I'm going to defer to our town council.
So if there's a surplus at the end of the year, it all lapses back into the general fund. Things at the end of the year that can come out of last year's budget are encumbered funds for contracts that are entered into before the end of the year, and purchases that would fall under the general purposes of the budget. As long as there's some sort of line item in the budget that covers it, the selectmen can, of course, move the money around.
All right, so as an example, if there was approximately $450,000 in surplus last year, could they purchase a truck with that operating budget surplus?
Most likely, yeah.
And that's not, but that's not covered in the operating budget. It's not a line item in the operating budget.
No, but I'm sure whatever department they were going to purchase the truck for. So say they were going to purchase the truck for the highway department. You've got a highway department budget. And in there, I'm sure there's some sort of vehicle line. So they could use
If
that.
there is no vehicle line.
I think the highway department line, so DRA defines purpose sort of broadly. And so as long as the purpose, which is, shown on the DRA form, and as long as this meeting has not voted to zero out that line item or to not appropriate that line item, money can be moved there.
But if there is no line item in the budget, as broad as a definition you could give to any particular line item for a new vehicle,
If there is no purpose in the budget for a new vehicle, no, they couldn't spend money on that.
so, okay, so they couldn't buy a truck if there was no line item in the budget.
Again, I assume whatever department they're going to buy a truck for is in the budget, and so that would cover it.
Okay, so in any particular department, if there's no line item in the budget,
I would need to see the budget, and we'd need to go over what those different
I
categories
think
were.
the board is in violation. They purchased a truck for close to $44,000 last year, out of budget surplus, and it was specifically. It was specifically for a department,
Okay.
code enforcement.
Well, that has to do with last year's budget and not this year's budget, so I'd be happy to discuss it with you after the meeting, but I'm not sure it's an appropriate
Okay.
conversation to have
So,
here.
But there would have to be a line in that budget for a vehicle in order for them to purchase a vehicle. All right.
Any other discussion? All right, Frank, before you head back up, I just want to make sure there's no one out, because we talk about giving everybody a shot, right? So, yeah, I had a feeling.
Neil Kirk, Mount Dearborn Road. I'd like to talk about this article in the context of taxes. The Finance Committee is recommending various articles for both the schools and the town. And by the way, I'm speaking for myself and not for the Finance Committee. Is recommending articles for both the schools and the towns that would raise our tax rate by 19.8%. That's $1,029 on a typical $350,000 home. Now, in calculating that increase, you have to assume the estimates of revenues are accurate. And we know historically that that's not the case, that the estimates of revenues are very conservative, and the actual revenues come in significantly higher. But let's assume
that it cuts the tax rate in half from roughly 20% to 10% if the Finance Committee recommendations were approved. That's $515 on a $350,000 house at a time when inflation, latest numbers, is 7.5%. And most folks in town are not getting 7.5% raises. Indeed, this body later on will consider an article giving a 3% raise to town employees. I think every voter needs to look not just at this budget, which may be a good one or a bad one, but at the entire package and ask whether, even though the individual articles may be worthy, taken collectively, we can afford, at a minimum, a 10% tax increase and theoretically a possible 20% tax increase. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, Frank.
Frank Campana again. I just want people to know when I speak to money, where I get the information from. Again, I can be corrected, so I'm really up here a second time just to kind of cover myself. I want to backtrack to the police department. His surplus, I did misspeak. He had, this year it was 160, or at the end of 21, it was $168,000 that he had to return. I think I said 190, so it's 168. And some of the items that were pre-bought by the year-end purchases by the police department, again, I had mentioned their line items, and it was a total of $50,000. So he returned 160, and he could have, funded those lines. Protect tactical gear, ballistic helmets, network, 9 taser components. I won't go through it all. 5 replacement tasers, a handgun, a rifle. So I didn't read the whole thing here, but those are items that are covered in his budget. They're not covered in his budget. Well, that's where I found the lines that said, okay, he says no. And the other couple of, is he addressing me to that?
So there's an information board over there, just to refer if anybody might look at it. It contains budgetary shortfalls as well as budgetary overages, which does include the Kalia line. I've been trying to correct the Kalia line, but the budget has to pass for me to get rid of that money. This information, as far as year-end purchases, is available online under the police department website. It specifically goes through where the budgetary shortfalls were and why the current budget does not meet what we needed at the end of the year. And I'll give you one example. My ballistic budget is about $1,300, I think. One ballistic vest is about $1,500. They're only good for 5 years. I have 12 officers. I need to buy about 3 a year. Do the math. The money is not there. That's why it's a shortfall, and I'm asking for the budget to be corrected. If you'd like to refer to that, it goes over each one. Again, if you'd like to pull it up online, you can get the direct information. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. But he still had a surplus that he could have used, and he's allowed to use that. 2 other items, year-end purchases, well, maybe 3. The transfer station, there's $10,000 to do some renovations of the office. Please do not misunderstand me. It's not the question of the renovations. It's where the money is coming from. The $10,000 came from year-end for year-end purchases from budget surplus. The town has a capital reserve fund for building maintenance for $10,000, and if it was that urgent, and I'm looking at one selectman specifically, if it was that urgent and dire, why didn't the board take money from that building maintenance? which I believe is probably an appropriate use of that money. No, they want to keep that money in the capital reserve fund, and then they want to tax me another $10,000, or all of you. And the biggest one here for town office is air conditioning replacement with HEPA filters, $70,000. Now, listening and attending selectmen's meetings, that is one of the approved, again, correct me if I'm wrong, that is one of the approved or allowed monies from the ARPA funds. You know, the big money tree that the government has? They could have used that money. I know there's, you know, they want to preserve that money for another upcoming, you know, another year or so. But I believe that that $70,000 could have been used from the ARPA, from the big government money, the almost $1 million the town's going to get over 2 years. No, they want to tax me twice.
Point of order, Madam Moderator. This campaign has asked questions of the board, but hasn't given the opportunity to answer.
Yep.
Can we take a pause and let them answer the questions he's asking before we split over it?
Frank, would you prefer to go through your entire list of questions,
Well,
and then we can just...
This is the last one.
All right.
The one I'm on now is the last
So
one.
once we get through that one, then I'm going to hand it back over to the board
Okay.
for answers.
Okay.
All right, so is someone besides Maureen
So
collecting all the questions? Because they were rapid fire, there were 4 of them.
I know.
So
I guess
police
I'm guilty of that.
budget, the transfer station, $10,000. The ARPA funds for the air conditioning and HEPA filters of, I believe you said $70,000, right?
Yes.
All right, and we got one more. What do you got?
Well, I'll leave it at that.
Okay,
Thank
thank you,
you.
sir. Would somebody like to take those? So I've got ARPA funds for, why don't we start with the last one, ARPA funds for air conditioning versus,
I'll take it. So Frank's not necessarily wrong. Yes, those funds could come out of the ARPA money. But again, anybody in this room that has listened to the communications factor of the town services, fire, police, highway, realizes the dire need for improvements to that system. It is, no exaggeration, life and death. So this board decided to use those ARPA funds for the communications. This board decided to do that. And with this surplus that Mr. Campana talks about, yes, we decided to update the building that every one of us has to walk into at one point in the year and update the ventilation systems and use that money that was there, created by a lack of personnel in this town. So yes, that was an idea of the board to use that and not use the ARPA money for the town buildings.
In response to Mr. Campana's statement about the transfer station, Benji is very, very conservative and very concerned about his expenditures, and he doesn't like to spend a lot of money if he doesn't have to. He came to us with an original request to upgrade the building at the transfer station, and he came in with a proposal of $6,000 to do that. And he was going to put it in for the proposed budget for this coming year, another $4,000. He had the money in his account. That building is in dire, dire need and a safety hazard, and it's a wonder, you know, we haven't had more problems there. And he turned around and we opted to give him a full $10,000, and hopefully the budget will pass and he can get more money for next year to do that.
okay. Any other discussion?
Before I forget, I noticed, Madam Moderator, your name is not on the ballot this year, so I'd like to personally thank you for your service to the town for the past few years, both your duties here as well as at the elections and your appointments to the Finance Committee.
Thank you, sir.
The presentation by Selectman Meany on the operating budget indicated what the budget drivers were, and basically there are two departments. The highway department's about a $134,000 increase. Police department's about a $100,000 increase. And the third biggest driver of increase in cost is something the Board of Selectmen is responsible for. The Board of Selectmen gave out $66,276 in raises to individuals, and they don't mention it. They don't discuss it in public, and we have to kind of drag it out of the board. But that's the third biggest driver, $66,276 given out in wage increases. I'm not questioning the justification for doing it, but the board continues to fail to even mention that. It's the third biggest driver in the budget this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jack Dearborn, 148 Gould Road. I just want to say that there's a lot of, I wouldn't call it criticism, but commentary today regarding what happened to the budget that we spent through this year. And I'll echo the Select Board's comment regarding, you put a budget together, and it's anticipation, and it's the best understanding going forwards. This budget has been scrubbed 8-1 by the Finance Committee, and not to mention countless public input at town meetings. So I understand there's some issues that could be polished a little bit more, but that's kind of a looking through the rear view mirror based on what happened this year for next year. I just have to say that this has been an extraordinary year for trying to manage a budget. Poor Naomi over there, I can attest from the land use, she was wearing at least 6 different hats this year and covered it well with the help of other people jumping in. So it's an extraordinary effort that we made it through an extraordinary year. So you wouldn't expect this kind of challenges throughout the year. But at the end of the day, the selectmen have decided within their discretion for the ARPA money. I mean, that's our money. It's not Washington's. I spend a lot, excuse me, I spend a lot of money there, as well as other people in this room. So it's our money to spend. The selectmen are given that authority. I can tell you from personal experience and evaluation, the radio system in this town is very wanting. What I mean by that is, you may have the most expensive house in the town, you may have the best road in front of your house in the town. You probably, chances are you don't have radio communications for life and safety. That's what that money is anticipated for. And after this budgeting cycle, I'm sure the selectmen will get involved and make the right decisions on that. So I'm not making light of people's criticism, commentary. I'm just saying a budget is an anticipation going forwards, and it's up to the town selectmen to manage within the constraints of that budget. So I would urge the passing of this article. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So I see no one else up. So we're moving it then, no? Thank you. Do I have a second? Okay. Did you get that, Maureen?
Again, you don't need to vote, Madam Moderator, to put it on the ballot. It just,
Okay. As
no
written.
more discussion. It shall appear on the warrant as written.
All right. Thank you. All right, Maureen, restricted? Second. Okay. There are many seconds. Okay, all those in favor of restricting reconsideration? You got it? Okay, it is restricted. All right, moving on.